to learn more about this topic, our reporter Linh Hương sat down to interview Mr. Mario Singh, a world-renowned forex expert and also founder and CEO of Fullerton Markets in Singapore. Let's take a listen. Well, thank you very much for spending your time with us in our show today. So first of all, the yuan has recently been included in IMF's special drawing rise of the SDR basket, which are made up of such major currencies as the dollar, the euro, the pound, and the yen. How does this affect the Vietnamese dong?
The policy actually comes in October of next year, which is another probably 9-10 months away. So for China, it's actually a vote of confidence for the currency to be finally included in the SDR. But for Vietnam, I don't think it's going to affect it too much, although I think if the Chinese yuan were to fall, Vietnamese dong is more or less slightly pegged to the Chinese currency because there's just so much trade that's happening within China and Vietnam.
If the US Federal Reserve increases the interest rates on the dollars, what will be the prospects of the dong?
Let's assume that the United States actually will start hiking rates. What is going to happen in the emerging nations is that it's going to be a lot of capital flow that is going to be moving out of the emerging nations and back to the United States. Now, granted, the US is a country that has very low interest rates, but the thing about the whole world, about capital flows of money, is that people like to see safety. And the US is still considered a AAA rated currency, although it has one of the world's biggest trade deficits. So when money flows back to the United States, the cause and effect would be that many of the emerging nations will now start to weaken. We've seen that happen in Malaysia, we've seen it happen in the Thai baht, we've seen it happen in the Indonesian rupiah. So this is something the government of Vietnam has got to look out for, to try and strike a balance between money flowing out and back to the United States, which could cause the Vietnamese currency to actually weaken a little bit.
2016 is predicted to be a year full of volatility. What do you think the State Bank of Vietnam should do in terms of exchange rate policy?
I think that's one thing that the government is doing well, is to actually have a gradual weakening of the exchange rate. So what that means is that rather than having the dong, for this year in fact, the dong actually weakened about just slightly above 5% to the US dollar. For next year, my suggestion would be to actually have a slightly more gradual weakening. Now that is going to help both the exporters and the importers. Many people think it's just going to help only the exporters, but the good thing with the gradual weakening of the Vietnamese dong with the US dollar, it will also help the importers, especially at a time like now when global inflation is low. So that will help the internal economy of Vietnam.
What other monetary tools can the State Bank of Vietnam apply in order to stabilize the macro economy?
Well, that's a great question. So let's look at the actual economy of Vietnam right now. The SBV, the State Bank of Vietnam, they're actually projecting that there might be a small deficit in trade for the entire year of 2015. For all this while, Vietnam has actually been having a surplus, but for the end of 2015, there might be a small deficit, about say $4 billion. So how would the country actually start balancing this trade deficit? Well, there's a couple of ways. Two of the top ways, number one, would be actually to issue bonds. So if you were to issue bonds, you're now drawing capital in which they are able to balance that deficit. Number two, which is something I feel that they will be doing slightly more, would be the attraction of FDI, which is something the government is doing really well. So these are the two tools that the State Bank of Vietnam can do, and I personally feel that they will be doing more of drawing FDIs into the country.
Thank you very much for joining our program today.
Thank you for having me.